Alright guys, TacticalRab again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. The Rostermania chaos is well and truly underway. Practically every team in the league last night looking to make some serious changes. So many major name free agents on the market. Miami Heretics making some changes. Vancouver Surge, so many finals appearances this year, but practically every player on their team is available if you want to go and get them. And of course the big story, Atlanta FaZe, the team that topped the CDL charts for the last 6 years until this season. They are finally blowing it up. The trio is no more. aBeZy and Simp for now are still on FaZe, but even that might not last. Cellium on the market as a big name free agent. What is going to happen next with even FormaL potentially throwing his hat back in the ring? Very much into your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. You're not going to want to miss any of what's going to happen over the next couple of days because this has already been a pretty crazy Rostermania and that is not going to change because just the volume of free agents is pretty much absurd and the number of teams that are looking to make changes right about now. Beans, he was on Toronto, then he was on Team Orchid. He's an unrestricted free agent for the new season. We've got Minnesota Rocker looking to blow up their entire team. That is at least the story that Ronnie comes out with yesterday, that more than likely every single one of these players is gone. Major rebuild happening over there, as they say. You know, Nero, Geo, Kenny are expected to hit free agency. Estriel may stay, so that's a possibility. There's talk that Looney, as the head coach of the team, his role is reportedly under review. So there's lots of talk on what they may or may not do there. But yeah, as it stands, Nero, Geo, Kenny definitely gone. Estriel maybe could stay, maybe could go, but they do confirm yesterday that this trio is gone. So the plan, it seems, for Rocker is to keep Estriel and build around him, which makes some degree of sense. If another team really wanted him, they could probably go and get him, but Rocker's plan is to let Nero, Geo, and Kenny all go. So these guys are all moving to unrestricted free agency. Where next for these individuals is a good question. Kenny's not going to have a hard time getting a team, per my understanding. Geo and Nero, again, it creates some questions there because for all the talent that these guys clearly have, actually turning that into any sort of success has proved to be a serious issue. Kenny says unrestricted free agent for BO7. I'm sure he'll be back. Where is a big question. But Rocker was one thing, yeah, sure, expected they're going to blow it up. But what about the Vancouver Surge? These guys made so many grand finals this year, never quite got over the line, but as we said, it was not like this team was necessarily going to run it back because these players may get better offers or their contracts may simply be expired. And that's what Ronnie says, that pretty much for this team, their entire team within reason is expected to go into free agency, right? So obviously Neptune is very sought after and for good reason. He may very well be available. We'll see that. Well, he is available. We'll see that in a second. Contracts for Abuzah for 04 are expected to expire. Nastie's status is less clear, but it's believed that he may have joined Vancouver under terms tied to his previous Thieves contract, which would make him a free agent as well. And that was thereafter confirmed to be true. Nastie says unrestricted free agent for 2026. 04 said unrestricted free agent for 2026. Abuzah, I don't think has said anything yet, but even then, if someone wants to get him, I'm sure that it's absolutely possible. The key one really, though, being Neptune, right? Of course, he was their main man for the majority of the season once they brought him in. He's available. He's unrestricted. Like, it's pretty wild. Usually, we look at these Rostermanias, and there's a couple of teams making changes. I mean, okay, most teams make changes. What I mean is that typically a lot of teams will make moves, but they may not be super drastic moves. Certainly not the top teams. But the way that Heretics, and we'll see them in a second, and now Surge have been very, very impressive for a large part of their season, and practically all of their players may well be available, is a really big deal. aBeZy's not been tweeting much lately, but he says this Rostermania is going to be a wild one, eyes emoji. And he says this in light of what we'll see in a second with Cellium getting himself out of that situation at FaZe. Now, this is also very interesting, as I say, we've got a lot to cover. CleanX and Insight testing free agency, potentially parting ways with Toronto. So this is the article that Ronnie comes out with there, and says that their contracts are expiring. So they as well are looking at options. Now, CleanX and Insight, they've been a duo for a long time. Simp and aBeZy might split up this offseason. It's a very realistic possibility. But CleanX and Insight will probably look to stay together again. Now, we've seen this before. Insight literally tweeted last year he was a free agent, and then he ends up back on Toronto, right? So it's not impossible that they end up back on Toronto anyway. But it's got to be said, they could be options, and they are going to be free agents, we think, and they could be exploring those opportunities with other teams. The big news, though, with Toronto is that they are looking to build around JoeDeceives. He is meant to be their centerpiece. He's apparently going to be the cornerstone of the franchise and plans to build the next iteration of the roster around him. Now, there is interest in other teams getting JoeDeceives. I think it's something that, even Thieves could have thought about bringing him back. Certainly FaZe, it would have been maybe a conversation. But Toronto say, no, we're keeping him. And if you want him, you're going to have to pay a serious buyout. And it's not like there aren't other options on the market for those teams to get if they want to, maybe even including the likes of a CleanX. So that's what we think Toronto are doing. JoeDeceives +3. It may be those guys, it may not. And then we got the updates coming out of Heretics. So as it stands, Metals is an unrestricted free agent, as is Real. So Real and Metals both tweeted that their contracts are over. Now, look, Heretics may just decide to bring them back, but Rincor and Super are still under contract. But as we know, if another team really wants to come along and try and poach them away, it doesn't seem that that would be totally impossible. And, would Heretics bring back Metals and Real, just re-sign them? Real, we know that there was some interest in Toronto getting him last time, whether that's now a possibility, who knows? Maybe Real could be a serious candidate. Of course, Rincor would be the biggest candidate from that team, and he's still, as far as we understand, under contract with the Heretics. But it's not like that team has said, no, we're sticking together, this is what it is. Metals is tweeting UFA, they may not decide to bring him back, they may go for another approach, maybe they get better offers elsewhere, who knows? And maybe Rencor, I'm sure he will have people knocking at the door as well. Maybe including the likes of an Atlanta FaZe. So let's just get into it, right? Because we've talked about Surge, we've talked about all the other teams, there's plenty going on right now, but FaZe is the big one, right? They bombed out of the World Cup, top 12, losing to Omit, right, to bow out of the tournament and challengers team. It was inevitable the team was going to blow it up, and our understanding was, going into this off-season, that Drazah and Cellium were going to find themselves as free agent. Drazah says unrestricted free agent for Black Ops 7, and Cellium then drops the free agent tweet. I mean, this guy's not been a free agent in like 7 years, since going into the Black Ops 4 season, pretty much. So it's kind of crazy to think about. This tweet went pretty hard, at 1 million views here, right? I mean, 17,000 likes, because it's a big moment. Cellium being available completely for free, it seems, on the market. And I don't think FaZe are just going to bring it back. We always talk about this with free agency. It's not impossible. They could just bring it back to the team. That isn't going to happen as far as we understand. I don't think it might end up being better, really, for Cell, maybe for Simp as well, for those guys to part ways. They've been a trio for a long time. They've had lots of success together, but it wasn't working out over the last couple of years, and frankly, they did not win as much as they should have done with the talent that that team had and how dominant that they were for a good period of time. So it looks like the trio certainly are parting ways. Whether all of them part ways, that is a different question, because aBeZy and Simp are still under contract. But as we said, it doesn't mean that somebody couldn't go and buy them out. Rincor is still under contract with Heretics, and if someone wanted to get him, maybe they could give it a go, but, it would probably cost a fair bit of money. aBeZy, that's an interesting one. Even Simp, right? But let's say aBeZy under contract with FaZe. There have been rumours, which continue, that aBeZy has interest from the Falcons. And if the Falcons want to go and get him, they will cough up the money to go and get him, you would imagine. So I don't think that it's particularly likely even that duo stays together, although they might. It could be Simp and aBeZy looking for two. But part of me kind of doubts it. I think that the chances of that are, maybe 50-50, maybe significantly weaker than that right now. And Cellium certainly isn't going to be there any longer. So where the hell is Cellium going to go? That is a very good question indeed. There's obviously people talking about Thieves, what that might look like, whether Cellium in for Ghosty could work. I don't know if I really like it, but yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think in the comment section below? There's lots of talk about Cellium. He is, at least for now, the biggest name free agent, because the talent is undeniable, the playstyle at times is certainly questionable, but the results do a lot of the time speak for themselves, and when there's anyone available from the Atlanta FaZe team that's been so dominant from that trio, teams will have to seriously think about it. The other question is, what about the Falcons? Because we know that Falcons are probably going to build around Pred, potentially Pred +3, Xnid may stay, they may look to get aBeZy, they're going to need an AR in there somewhere, and look, I do feel bad for whoever's running the objective on a team with Pred and Cellium. but it is something at least that might be worthy of consideration, especially if Falcons are taking things especially seriously. Now, there's also a couple of wildcards to throw into the mix as well. Illy says he's back, unrestricted free agent for the 2026 season. Yes, I'm unretired, and yes, I will be putting an end to this. So Dashy's in the reply is like, are you sure about that, Inda? You're really going to end our dominance once and for all? But look, Illy's talking a big game. He retired a couple of months ago. Now he's coming back. And then we get this tweet from FormaL, and I couldn't help myself, of course, but to talk about this. If you guys aren't aware, the Halo Championship Series is effectively winding down after this year's World Championship coming up in a couple of months' time. So as a result, FormaL and that OpTic Halo team and all of the Halo players are potentially available. OpTic Legends is a very talented player, and we did a little clip on our Dope Check show the other day talking about where he should go, and we put that clip out on Twitter and he retweeted it. So, he's very much heavily implying that he wants to come into COD. There are some big name teams that could give him an opportunity, and FormaL is even saying, well, how about this? FormaL would definitely prefer to stay in Halo than COD. He's talked about the scrim schedule, enjoying the fact that it's a little bit more lackadaisical playing Halo than it is playing multiple scrim sets a day of Call of Duty. But if Halo is no longer an option, then maybe it's something to think about, especially if some of the top teams might well need an AR. So just one thing to keep in the back of your mind there. I still think it's pretty unlikely, but just one thing to look at. Now, Cloud9, Gwinn is officially an unrestricted free agent as well. They confirmed that. He'd only seemingly joined on like a 2-week deal. Kremp maybe is still signed, but it's tough to imagine that Cloud9 are really going to stay together in a great degree of form. Kremp says, yo. Drazah says, you're a free agent. Dashy's like, yo, is Kremp on the market, right? So Kremp saying, hit my line. So these guys are going back and forth there. Kremp's a talented player for sure. Maybe there's something in there that he could become available and what that would mean. We get this from Vivid as well. Free agent for next year, improved a lot individually, both in-game, out-of-game this year. Showed at the end of the season in challenges on the Omid team that did so well back at the World Cup. Whoever picks up Vivid, and I think he'll get a spot, just try not to drop him this season. That might be a good idea. Before we get to the full list of free agents though, I wanted to touch on this because there's been lots of speculation about this. Goes to Hope, who definitely knows a thing or two, says LA Thieves are going to stick together and they're going to run it back for the Black Ops 7 season. Now, he also tweeted this out, and just before I get to this tweet, Jake Hale actually also said that he's pretty credible and he'd heard about this as well, so I reckon that it must be true. So that is the latest rumour on Thieves, is that they're going to stick together. But he also tweeted out, banana tempts the little monkey, but the sweetness rots his teeth, which I'm not going to get into why he's tweeted this in the way that he has, but the point, I guess, being that someone came on the market that was tempting Thieves to make a change, but they've elected not to. Now, I will say, I don't imagine this decision is necessarily 100% totally final. That may be their current feeling, and I also think that it's probably a very reasonable decision. I know that people are talking about Envoy and Ghosty and, upgrades and not being so good at the end of the season, which I do totally get. But also, when this team was at their best, Envoy and Ghosty were playing their roles perfectly, and it was tough to imagine that anyone could have played their roles much better than they did. And they did have lots of success. Yeah, they got complacent at the end of the season. They fell off big time, and that was a big problem. But I can understand sticking together. But also when you've got so many key free agents on the market and potentially more coming available day by day over the next few days, it maybe makes it more challenging for them to stick together over time. So it may be their current feeling, but there was discussion last night. Octane was suggesting that he's not convinced that they will stick together. I think it's right now, based on this report, or rumours anyway, I would say it's more likely than not that they stick, but I still wouldn't be massively surprised to see the team change their minds over the coming days, depending on what occurs. So, who knows? But for now, it looks like that team might be sticking it together. This was a screenshot from last night's streams, just to look at some of the free agents here. So, most of the teams, obviously, we don't know what Boston are going to do, we don't know what Cloud9 are going to do, we don't really know, who could be available, who's going to go. The point is, these are the list of free agents, and yeah, maybe FormaL isn't realistically an option, but still, Cell, Abuzah, Drazah, Mamba, obviously Craze there from an SMG perspective. I'm not going to go through the entire list, but all of these guys on the right-hand side here are very much available, and I mean, presumably the Ravens are also going to be totally blowing up that team as well. Maybe they don't even exist next year, who knows? And this is just a number of the players that all went free agent last night. So Drazah, Real, Metals, Neptune, Gwinn, Nero, Cell, Kenny, Nastie, Geo04. And that really is just scratching the surface of what is currently going on. This is another list of the current free agents. So as I say, there's a lot to come. And even once the top teams start to piece together their rosters, this is still going to take a long time to work out what's going to happen for next year, who's going to team with who, especially because it's not just about the free agents, it's also about teams like Falcons who have the money and the resources and seemingly the willingness to go out and pay a buyout for a player if they want to do so. And maybe the top teams have the ability to do that as well. Octane did talk about FaZe, because what are FaZe going to do? What team are they going to form next year? Are they going to go down the route of picking up some players with some higher upside? And, you know, Octane's perspective was, if you're FaZe, you're not picking up challengers players, you know, you're not taking the downside, you're taking someone solid. But I think if I'm Simp personally and I'm trying to build a new team, I'm probably trying to find players who have the upside to give me the potential that we've previously had, rather than taking known quantities. We know what Mercules has done this year. I'm not saying that Craze or Mumber are going to be Mercules, but I could definitely see FaZe taking a bit of a risk when it comes to this off-season period, especially if they don't have as deep a pockets as Falcons do, which we're pretty sure that they don't. That is where we are going to leave it for this morning. I'll be back later today to give you guys the latest updates, because there's a lot happening. There's a lot of clips going down right now, but appreciate all the support over the last season, first of all, but also over what is going to be a very hectic off-season to come. So hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.